But if you do it right, and if you have smart people, which we do, it's a 10x return. So you might buy that land for $1 million, and in 18 months you could sell it for, 10 million or 8 million or whatever. You got some expenses during that time. You got some risk, of course, but at the end of the day, again, if you know what you're doing, it can be very lucrative. So that's been one of my better investments.
Hey, welcome to Uncommon State of Mind, where we debate different ways for you to leverage your next investment to create time freedom, legacy impact, and generational wealth, so you can live that uncommon life. But in order to do that, you must be uncommon. My name is Joey, aka Mr. J Mays.
Hey, and I'm AD, also known as AD, the Fly Realtor.
Boom. Guys, we have another awesome guest on here today, Bishoy Habib. Awesome guy. He is a real estate attorney. AD's going to go ahead and give us the intro.
Hey, yeah, so a little bit about Bishoy here. He is an investor-friendly attorney licensed to practice in New York and Florida. He is the founder and managing partner at Legacy Legal, a Florida law firm that represents investors, developers, lenders, real estate companies, and business owners. In addition, Bishoy is the broker and co-founder of Capstar Real Estate, a hybrid brokerage in Florida with 20 agents that specializes in off-market and creative deals. Bishoy is also an active real estate investor all over the country and successfully started a fund in 2020. Bishoy also founded a sports event management company with high-profile clients including Todd Gurley, Le'Veon Bell, Deshaun Jackson, Jameis Winston, and North Carolina men's basketball team. All right, Bishoy, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much, AD, for the intro. Thank you, Joey. It's always, it's kind of weird when you're reading that whole thing. It's like when they're singing happy birthday to you at the restaurant, you're just like not sure what to do. So I appreciate it. I was kind of waiting for it to end there, but thank you so much. I appreciate you guys having me on the show, and I'm excited to chop it up.
Awesome. Bishoy, so, dude, you're a busy man. You are a busy man. Before we get into the meat and potatoes, as far as, actually being a real estate attorney, I want to ask a little bit about that agency that you have, the sports agency that you have. Like, how did you get into that?
Yeah, I didn't know you were going to bring that up. It usually doesn't come up when I'm on podcasts, but so a few years back, we're here in Tampa Bay. We had a friend who was a mutual friend of Jameis Winston, who was the number 1 overall pick and was the franchise quarterback at the time here in Tampa. One of my best friends, my childhood friends, had a mutual friend with him, and he's like, hey, would you guys want to help Jameis put this camp on, like a football camp? We're like, sure. So we kind of just did that. We had no, we were just like, oh, this is cool. We're helping the franchise quarterback. And then they loved what we did so much. They're like, hey, would you help us organize this? And would you do his charity golf tournament? And then we started doing those things, and we kind of were like, well, we should form a company. And then one day, you guys will like this, you're in LA, that our mutual friend comes up to us and he's like, hey, do you guys want to work with Todd Gurley? And Todd Gurley was the offensive player of the year that year. He was second to Tom Brady in Super Bowl voting. And so we're like, well, what do you mean? Do we want to work with Todd Gurley? He's like, all right, like fly out to LA next week. And then we were in Todd Gurley living room a week later pitching him. He was like, yeah, whatever, let's run it. Then we had to talk to his agent, and then it just kind of blew up out of nowhere. And then all these players started hearing about us. We started getting appearances. It kind of snowballed into something very exciting, very fun. The most recent thing, we started getting NIL deals for the North Carolina men's basketball team. Okay. We started working with them before they went to the finals that season, the beginning of the season. So like that was an amazing run for us. And so, it's been fun. Sports is one of those things that just like unites people. So everyone loves talking about it. It's a fun thing to kind of, have and do in the background.
Right. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Man, how do you split your time up, man? Like, as far as time management, you have a few different businesses. You're definitely, you're doing this agent thing right now. So explain to me just a little bit about your time management.
That's the hard part. I think what I'm learning to get better at is saying no, because I don't like saying no. And And I think that's part of the reason why I've been successful is like I've been always willing to help people, but at some point you have to learn when to say no. And so that's honestly one of my daily challenges now. And just really trying to hone in on like just a couple things and be very good at those things and not get spread too thin. Those are kind of the things I think about every day. And all the things that I do, it's like, okay. And it's something that I'm much more actively thinking about now than I was even a few years ago. It's like every time I get an opportunity presented to me, it's like, okay, is this worth putting something else on the back burner? Because that's what inevitably is going to happen. We all have 24 hours. So if I take this opportunity, it sounds really fun and alluring right now. What is going to suffer because of that? Is it the law firm? Is it the brokerage? Is it the investment? Is it my family life, my wife? Is it my social life, which is almost non-existent anyways at this point? So it's a give and take at the end of the day, and there's no wrong answers. It's everybody makes their own decisions, but you just have to understand that for everything you do, you're not going to be doing something else. You're not going to have the time to give to something else. So it's just, you got to weigh the pros and cons.
So before we start getting into real estate, you did touch on like, you try to stick to the best couple of things that you do really well. What would you say those things are for you? What do you think you do really well?
I think that I'm a deal maker. I think that's like the best thing. One of my favorite things to do, and also one of my greatest skills. I think I'm a hell of a negotiator. I think I grew up in a household. I'm Egyptian, and so we Middle Easterners, we know how to negotiate. So I've always been a good negotiator. I've always been able to kind of like find some common ground, but make everyone feel like they were winning. So when I have clients, I love negotiating good deals for them. Whether it's a good situation like a real estate transaction or a business transaction, or a bad situation where it's like, hey, let's just come to an agreement before we go to litigation, right? So I would say that's one of my strengths. And then I think just getting stuff done. Like, I think a lot of times attorneys are scared to get their hands dirty. And I'm just not, like, in the sense of, whatever it takes to get the deal done, whatever it takes to get this closed, whatever it takes to make the client happy. Like, those are the things that I kind of have that mentality. And I think it's lost on a lot of attorneys. And I think it's just my personality is like, I was never scared to muck it up. Like, even when I played basketball, man, I was diving on the floor for loose balls. And I think that kind of that mentality, I think that mentality kind of translates. I was scrappy as hell. I was like Pat Bev out there, except with a jump shot. And
Pat Bev.
Cool.
Yeah, bro. Like I was talking trash. I was in your face. I was hitting threes. Like, but that's my mentality. Is just whatever it takes, right? So I feel like that translates pretty well into what I do in every facet. So I think those are a couple strengths of mine.
Wait, that's thank you for touching on that.
Yeah. I'm going to ask one more.
One last one.
Yeah, go for it.
Because you are an attorney, and one of the things that I do is I actually work with attorneys from time to time as far as like digital marketing and things of that nature. What have you started leveraging any of your work or like automating any of your work with AI? Or how do you see the AI like in the field of attorneys and actually helping, or have you been like engaged in that world?
Yeah, it's a very interesting topic, especially in the legal field. So I have in-house an AI consultant, because I realize that if you're not ahead, you're behind in this world,
right,
and it's not going away. So if you're watching this, if you take nothing away from this, go learn something about artificial intelligence. Go immerse yourself, because I promise you, it's not going anywhere. Actually, today is the worst AI will ever be. And tomorrow will be the same thing, because it's growing exponentially. So whatever field you're in, even if you're in a field where you think AI is not going to affect it, I will bet my life savings, it will be affected by AI one way or the other, right? Even if you're doing something old school, like working in a factory, it's going to be affected by AI. If you're an appraiser, if you're, just something using your hands, even if you're in this labor, it's going to be affected by AI, I promise you. So that's kind of the backdrop. And I say legal is an interesting topic for two reasons with AI. So the first reason is, this is a commonly known thing among lawyers, but I think maybe outside the legal field, people haven't heard of this. But there was a case a couple of years, like maybe less than a year ago now, or a year ago, this attorney in New York typed it, prompted ChatGPT. Again, this was a year ago. So like a year feels like 10 years in AI years, right? Because this was like before. I mean, right now I'm using all the tools that didn't exist a year ago, but he in ChatGPT asked it to prepare basically like a pleading or a brief for the court. And then he just copy pasted it and submitted it to the court. Well, the court obviously read it. And obviously when you submit those, you cite cases. That's how it works. Like you cite precedent. So it says like this case from 3 years ago stated that this, and this, and therefore this is the rule. All of those citations were false cases, not real fake cases that did not exist. So the court read them and they called the attorney and they're like, what the hell is this? And that guy got in big trouble and they sanctioned him. And they made an example out of him, right? Because that was the first big case where someone tried to do something like that. And that was the first time the law and AI were in the spotlight, at least on a national level. So that set the precedent that we got to be careful. Now, the second point I'll make about it is that the legal field is a laggard industry, right? What that means is that we hate change. We are old. We are old school. We don't like doing things differently. So, it's not like we're early adapters to technology. We never have been. And quite frankly, I don't know if we will be in the near future, but there's attorneys like myself and a lot of other smarter attorneys who are trying to be progressive and get in line with the technology. But unfortunately, as a whole, when we talk about like the bar associations approving these, changes to AI and allowing us to implement it, they're much slower. And so, where I personally stand, I use AI every day. I use it in so many different features, so many different facets. If I have a quick question, if I want to know, it's informally, let's call it, right? I use it informally. So I've never done something with AI without proofing it myself, but I absolutely consider it like a good starting point for any kind of project you want. And then you got to take it, maybe it's 20, 30, 50, 80%. But then you got to take it the rest of the way. So that's kind of where I am with certain projects now.
So can we just talk about that attorney? Like that was just gross negligence. Like how do you
100%.
I thought he would have read it first.
I don't feel bad. I don't feel bad for him. Like it wasn't like if he had cited real cases, how would the court have ever known? It wouldn't. But you gotta at least, put some effort in. So even as an attorney, I do not feel bad for that attorney because that's gross negligence. You said it.
No, completely. Yeah, I thought it was going to be a situation where, like, since he was saving all the time from not prepping it, he would at least take the time to read through it.
Exactly.
Like especially
well, he got green.
Like, you really shouldn't have been using any AI without fact checking. Yeah. That's crazy.
Okay. All right.
Yep. So I'll agree.
All right, so enough fun questions that I just had off the top of my head. Let's actually get to the meat and potatoes of what we talk
right. About. Right. I mean, before anything, though, we just want to hear, like, what is it that led you to become an investor-friendly attorney? And then also, why does an investor not only need an attorney, but specifically an investor-friendly attorney?
Yeah, great question. So I'll give you my journey here in a nutshell. So I kind of grew up in real estate. When I was a kid, my dad was doing real estate, and so I would drive around the car. I would ride around the car with him. He would drive to his properties, and I think the thing that fascinated me from a young age was that he was his own boss as far from before I was born. So like I always saw that where he controlled his own destiny, and well, as a kid, what that means is he could pick me up from school, he could drop me off, he could do whatever he wanted. Now he worked like a dog, but he could take he didn't have to answer to anyone, right? He didn't have to call out. He didn't have to do all that stuff. So I always thought that was appealing because I don't like listening to people. And so it kind of caught my attention. Everybody else in my family is in the medical field, and I just hated that. My brain didn't work. I almost failed chemistry. So I was like, all right, I'll do real estate. So I went to undergrad. I was like, I'll get my law degree, and then when I get out, I'll be ready to take on any kind of real estate job. So I got out in 2012 with my law degree, and I wasn't planning to practice. And then next thing you know, we were in a recession, right? The great financial recession of 2008, the financial crisis. So I was like, okay, I guess I'll take a job. So I took a job in New York, with a big developer, worked a couple years, got some great experience with some big real estate projects. And then I moved back down here for family reasons. And then I kind of kept working. And then one day I looked up and it had been, many, many years of being an attorney. And I had slowly gained a lot of experience. And I found that I could really make a difference in people's lives. And I could really help investors who I always felt like more of an investor and more of a business person than an attorney. And so I always empathize with them, right? I'm always trying to figure out not how to kill the deal, but how to close the deal as long as it makes sense for my clients. So I always say, I'm not a deal breaker. I'm a deal maker, right? Because some attorneys go in there and they just try to muck it up and rack up the hours, and they don't want their client to take on any risk. And I say, no, risk is an inherent part of any investment. So, my job is to alert you to the risk, and it's ultimately your decision. Now, if I really don't like this, I'll tell you, I really don't like this deal. I think this is stupid. I don't think you should sign. I don't think you should close. At the end of the day, it's not my decision. It's not my money. It's yours. But I have to do what I think is in your best interest. I do have to share that with you. And so I think that that's what appeals to me. And I think that's why it's important to have an investor-friendly attorney if you're an investor, right? What I see all too often is these guys who have like a family law attorney, who maybe like, I don't know, did their divorce or, did their trust, 5 years ago or 10 years ago. And it's the only attorney they know. So they're like, hey, can you review these, this purchase and sale agreement? Can you help me, close this deal? Can you answer this question? And a lot of times those people they just don't know, right? They're not, but they try, and then they end up screwing up, and then they end up calling me, and then they got to pay double what they paid because now they screwed up, and now I got to go back and fix something. And so that's how I get a lot of my clients is either their attorneys are not real estate attorneys and they screwed up, or their attorneys are not answering their calls, or their attorney retired. So I would say those are the big three categories that I get, and a bunch of referrals, obviously, but the new people that kind of come out of nowhere, that's what they're looking for. So, it's super important to have a good attorney on the front end. You may think you're saving money by not. I promise you, it will catch up to you. There will be a time when you screw up or somebody sues you, even if you didn't do anything wrong, and you will wish that you had the right protections in place up front, and it'll cost you 10 times what it would have cost you up front on the back end.
Hey, Bishoy, what's one of the favorite cases that you've ever taken on?
It just happened last week. So I had a client call me. They found me on Google, and she calls me. She says, hey, she's a small business owner. She's like, hey, I've been in this commercial building. I've been renting it out. It was a rent to own option. So she rented it, and she was supposed to have the option to buy it within a 5-year period. Well, she tried exercising that option. And what happened was the landlord got greedy. And because the property, they had a price. So let's say it was they agreed to do it for $4 million 5 years ago. Well, now let's say the property is worth $6 million. So the landlord was getting greedy, even though it wasn't within his right to do that, and was like, you're not going to exercise this option. We need to renegotiate this. And by the way, she had her business in there. Her business was growing. It was doing well. And she had put hundreds of thousands of dollars of her own money that she was not responsible for, because the landlord was supposed to do the repairs, and she did the repairs because she's a good person and because she knew she was going to buy it. So she's like, whatever. The guy was still trying to strong arm her. She was using her family law attorney. And I hate to pick on the family law guys. It always is the family law attorneys that they end up using. I mean, she had been using this attorney, and for about 4, 5, or 6 months, let's call 5 months, been going back and forth, family law attorney with their attorney. Yeah, nowhere. She called me. She was pissed off. She was frustrated. She goes, here's the situation. Can you help me? I looked at it. I was like, yeah, I can help you. This is easy. How are you not getting results? You have the right to do this. She hired me. Within 40 days, we had the property closed, and she called me. It's one of my favorite stories that I've had recently. She called me afterwards. She was like, well, I called her to tell her we're good. And she was about to cry on the phone. She emails me a week later. She's like, hey, listen, you're my guy. I'm firing my other attorney for everything. I'm hiring you for everything. You get results. I love it. And by the way, that other attorney, this is not normal, but the other attorney called me afterwards and goes, hey, I heard you figured that thing out in like a month. And I'm like, I thought she was mad. I'm like, yeah. She's like, I have to start referring you all my real estate stuff. I was like, yeah. I'm like, hell yeah. I thought she was going to be like, you took my client. No, she was like, thank God I don't do that stuff. I don't want to do that stuff. All the real estate stuff's going to you from now on. I'm like, all right, this is good. This is good. So, but if you had the right person up front, she what she ended up paying rent for 5 months, and she's like, I don't care about all that. I just want to close and move on. But it still cost her time, effort, and hassle because she didn't have the right attorney in place. So that's why it's important to have a good, seasoned real estate attorney that has your back. And by the same token, and I get people ask me all the time, I'm going through a divorce, and as soon as I hear the word divorce, I'm like, not me, couldn't be me. No, I don't know. I know what other attorneys tell me, but there's no chance I'm taking your case on. It's just not what I do.
Hey, Bishoy, so you're involved in a lot of different things, man. What would you say is your best strength as a professional?
Well, what I love doing, like I said, is the negotiating of the deal, right? So my favorite thing is when a client comes to me and say, hey, look, like, there's this deal, right? And they'll lay out the deal, and the deal could mean a couple different things. It could mean they're buying something. It could mean they're doing a joint venture. So it's like, hey, this person's bringing the money, I'm doing the project, but we need to paper it up. Could be they're selling something. It could be they're buying or selling a business, but any sort of like a big transaction. It could be that they're lending money, right? I do a lot of lender law and private money lenders and things like that I represent. So someone comes to me and they say, hey, look, this is what we need to do. And then I structure the deal. I say, okay, look, this is probably what's fair for you and what will protect you the best if we structured it in this way. So let's take a joint venture, for example. That's one of my favorites because there's so many variables in it. It gets fun because you could get very creative. So let's say you guys came to me and you said, Bishoy, we got some money, and, Bishoy, you're a big, investor. So we're going to put our money with you. How does this work? Well, then it gets fun. Are you looking for a fixed return, which would be debt, or are you looking for a part of the upside, but there's no guarantee you get your money back, right? So we call that equity. That's the first basic question, right? And then we dive into it. Okay, is there a preferred equity? Do you get your money first, or do we both get our money at the same time? We call that pari passu. And then we kind of dive deeper and deeper into it, and we make sure that everybody's protected. Obviously, my main objective is to protect my client. But, that's kind of the progression of how the deal flows. And then if they have an attorney, we'll go back and forth with the attorney, and hopefully they know what they're doing because it makes my job easier. Because I don't have to explain things, and, they know what's expected. So that's what I do a lot of nowadays is kind of deal structure, deal making. I have clients all the time who reach out to me, say, hey, listen, I have some money. Do you have any clients that I could place it with? I have same time, I have clients come to me and say, look, we got this crazy deal. We need $1 million. Do you have the money? Then I start making calls and I connect people, and that's what I love doing. So it evolved into that. Obviously, it's tough to get to that spot until you earn people's trust. But then once you kind of come through over and over, people start calling you for really anything related to the deal flows. So that's kind of the stuff that I, these days that I've been focused on as an attorney.
As a real estate attorney and an investor, what are you currently dabbling in now that's bringing you some pretty good returns?
Yeah, so I am involved in a land entitlement company. So I'm not actively involved. I'm a passive investor in it. But for those who don't know, land entitlement is the process where they take like raw land. So like there's cows grazing on the land, right? It's not zoned right. It's not entitled. There's no utilities. There's nothing. And they take it and they basically make it shovel ready so that a builder can come and build, because it takes some time. It's an 18-month cycle typically. 12 to 18 months is kind of the minimum. But if you do it right, and if you have smart people, which we do, it's a 10x return. So you might buy that land for $1 million, and in 18 months you could sell it for, 10 million or 8 million or whatever. You got some expenses during that time. You got some risk, of course, but at the end of the day, again, if you know what you're doing, it can be very lucrative. So that's been one of my better investments. Single family, had a couple closings today, actually. I'm getting away from the single family stuff. It's just, it's just a pain, pain in the neck sometimes. on the smaller properties. And so I've also been involved in funds and hotels as a limited partner as well over the years. So it really just depends. But I think right now is a good time. I'm kind of looking at some stuff in the Midwest, and we'll see where that goes. But some Section 8 stuff actually. So we'll see where that ends up. But at the end of the day, as long as you're investing in something, it's better than nothing.
That are like, they, obviously they're engaged in their craft, but really want to get engaged with investing or really want to invest. Like, is that like something normal within your space?
No, I don't think it is. I mean, the very successful attorneys do, the ones that are like really good, like, for example, if you're a good real estate attorney, you're definitely investing, right? And so a lot of the good real estate attorneys that sit across the table from me, I know they're making money a lot of different ways. Sometimes they tell me, sometimes they don't, and I know other ways, but they are. Because they know, because we sit in a very good position where we can see who's doing what, and we can see who's making money, and we have access. We have access to people. We have access to money. We have access to deals, and so it's a good position to be in. Obviously, you can't abuse your position, or you can't abuse your authority, and you can't disclose things you can't, you're not supposed to. And I would never do that. And I'm not saying anyone else does. But at the same time, if you come to me and you're my client and you've closed 15 deals, and I see on the settlement statements, you've made $10 million in the last 5 years, you don't think if I come to you and I say, hey, AD, like, how do I get involved in these deals, man? Like, what do you need? You need money? That guy's going to be like, hell yeah. You're my boy. You're my lawyer. Like, come on in. Right. And that's how that works. But also if someone else, if they need something I don't have, I bring it. But that's kind of the point, right? That's how that works. So, again, that's kind of the one of the perks of the position that we're in. We have that ability to kind of see what's going on and, know who's capping and know who's not.
All right, for real.
Right.
All right. So, I was wondering at what point, so most of our audience, they're like beginners. So we're talking probably 1 to 3 properties, usually less than 5. At what point do you think an investor should seriously consider having an attorney on their team?
Well, I mean, I think you should probably consult with an attorney pretty early in the process. I think a lot of people are scared of attorneys because they think they're, an arm and a leg. And, if you're involved in like a big litigation, it is. But, for someone to review a set of documents for you, to review title, to review a deal, those things are not that expensive. And by the way, if you pay me a couple $1,000s, isn't that a lot cheaper than if you close on a property that has major issues, or the other thing I tell people is like, I can probably save you, if it's like a hotly contested deal, like if it's like a real negotiation, not like a cookie cutter deal where it's like standard forms and documents and it's just, but if it's like a real deal that's being negotiated, I guarantee you I'm worth my money. I mean, I'll bet on it every time that if you're paying me, whatever you're paying me, I'm going to save you that much money or make you that much money, just by virtue of my ability to negotiate, to know who should be paying for what, where their weak point is, how to leverage that. It's what I do. So that's why I say, like, I don't say like, oh, wait till you have 5 properties to get an attorney. I think that, the earlier you feel comfortable doing it, the better.
Right. Okay. That definitely makes a lot of sense. Yeah. 'Cause, I've heard other people like get a lot more specific. I've heard people say like, as soon as you want to invest in property, you should, or as soon as you get ready to start buying properties outside of your personal name, maybe that's when you should do it. So I do like that idea that like when you feel comfortable with it, because I think that just it helps take away some of the pressure, but then it still keeps it on top of mind to, really be looking at your business, at your buying, and then really consider like, okay, when is it that I should have an attorney, or when are things building up on me too much that I need somebody else who really does know what they're doing to take control. So yeah, it's a good way to look at it. I was wondering, so I know you're a like big time negotiator. You love to negotiate. As far as your deals, what do those usually look like? Like, do you operate in the like owner financing world often, or seller financing, I should say, or Like, you know what I mean? How creative does it get?
Yeah, 100%. So when interest rates went up a few years ago, the creative financing deals really kicked in, right? And so just to kind of explain that a little bit more to the audience, when interest rates in 2020 and 2021, when they were 3.5%, it was easy and it was fun to get a bank loan, and really you could make a lot of different deals work. When they jacked up interest rates to fight inflation in 2021, 2022, and then went up from 3% to 8%, all those deals, the deal flow stopped because it was tough to make a deal make sense, like an investment deal at 7 or 8 or 9%. It just didn't make sense because that's more than double the interest payments that you were originally paying. So that's your whole profit margin. So when that happened, the people that were really smart, they started doing creative financing deals. And because they couldn't get deals from the bank or money from the bank, so they would go to the seller of the property and say, you know, why don't you sell this to me and take a note back? So let's say it's a $500,000 property. I'll give you $100,000 down, and then I'll pay you interest on the $400,000 at 4% over a 5-year period, and then I'll pay you back. Well, that way hopefully everyone gets what they want, right? Because the seller, maybe they don't want to carry that property anymore because they can't afford the expenses. And then the buyer obviously can make it make sense financially because the interest rate's lower. And so everybody wins potentially, but also it's risky, right? Because if this guy stops paying, what happens to this guy? We also saw a lot of subject to deals.
Yeah.
Those became very common, and subject to deals just means that there's a loan in place. We don't touch that loan from the bank. We don't tell the bank what's going on. We just simply sell the property and leave the loan in place. There's a lot of risk involved in that. I've done a ton of those. Typically, we like to do that inside of a land trust for several reasons that I won't get into on this call right now. But it protects the parties a little bit more than just doing it the traditional way where you're transferring the property into someone else's name. And then we have a lot of novation deals as well. Novation deals, if you're not familiar, we've been doing a ton of those where you guys have a property, I lock it up for, let's just say $350,000, and then you give me the right to list that property on the MLS, right? And then I list it for $400,000. I make $40,000, you make your $350,000, or whatever I sell it for. I make that above $350,000, you get your $350,000, and everyone goes on. And we tell you what we're doing as well. So you got to get creative.
No, I was gonna say, so almost like wholesaling a little.
It's practically wholesaling, but also you give us the right to list it on the MLS.
Okay, cool. I get you. Okay.
Yeah, you guys have some interesting, creative ways to make deals work, and that's also make money. That's the first time I've heard of that. To be honest with you.
Yeah, I honestly didn't know that lawyers did that at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's not me as a lawyer. That's me. I'm taking my lawyer hat off, and that's my investor hat, right? So that's what the investment.
Got you.
All right.
Yeah, but I do as a lawyer, I do structure the creative financing deals. I do structure them, and then sometimes I'll close on them as an investor. So it's, I could see it from every angle is the good thing.
Exactly. Yeah. One thing I was learning about recently are land trusts. So as a lawyer, I was just wondering first, can you explain to us what a land trust is, and then also why it might be beneficial to have a land trust?
Yeah. So I love land trust. It's my favorite way to hold real estate. It's the way that I advise a lot of my clients to hold it. I don't say every client because everyone's in a different situation, but, and I started writing a book on land trusts here in Florida. So it's not out yet, but, land trusts are the best way to hold real estate, in my opinion, because number one, they're anonymous. So they keep you private, right? Okay. So a lot of people say to me, well, Bishoy, why do I want to be private? I'm not doing anything shady. I'm not doing anything illegal. And to them, I say, you're missing the point. We are in a very litigious society where everybody wants to sue everybody for everything. I happen to live in Florida, which is the number one state in the country for litigation. And we are 2 times.
I know.
Nope. And you guys are not even number 2. We are double the litigation of number 2, which is New York. You guys are probably number 3, I'm assuming. But that's crazy. That's crazy. So we actually had a bunch of laws Yeah, we actually had a bunch of laws that were passed last year to curb the amount of litigation, and a lot of it had to do with insurance. So, but anyways, everybody likes to sue. We're a litigation happy society, and I say that even as an attorney, right? I think it's wild, it's preposterous. So, people say, well, why do I need to be anonymous? Why do I have to hide myself? And I say, well, look, I mean, a lot of my investors, they have kids, and the kids maybe started driving them. So, okay, so your kid goes driving on the highway, hits somebody, right? Because they're 17 years old and they don't know how to drive yet. They hit somebody. That person then looks up who owns the car. It's you. Then that person looks up what you own. They see your 10 rental properties, and all they see is dollar signs, right? Did you do anything wrong? Of course not. Could you still lose it all? Of course you can. If you have a land trust, that's not possible. They won't be able to track you down if it's set up right. That's number one, okay. Privacy and anonymity. Number two, it is going to help you avoid probate. Probate is the idea or the concept that you have to put, when you die, all your stuff has to go through the court system. You have to pay attorneys, you have to pay legal fees, you have to pay court costs, and you have to let everybody know, hey, this person just died. Do they owe you money? If they do, come to court and collect. Right, that's what probate is basically. You're filing a lawsuit against yourself. That's what we call it. So it's a process that nobody likes. The only people who know what it is are the people who have been through it, and they stop me right when I say the word. They're like, anything but probate. I don't ever want to go through that again. If you own real estate, your real estate is tied up. You cannot sell it or liquidate it until you go through a probate. So, and a lot of times that probate, like in Florida, could last like a year. It could even last more if you have a lot of assets. So if you put your property in a trust, and specifically a land trust, you avoid probate. Really, through a lot of different kinds of trusts, you can avoid probate, but the land trust is one of them. So you don't have to deal with that. So let's say I put it in there, and I don't have kids, but if I did, I'd put my kids, or let's just say I put my wife as the beneficiary. If I died, straight to her. Doesn't go through court. We don't have to deal with any of that. Right. Here in Florida, this is not the case anywhere else. Here in Florida, for all my Florida listeners, you're very lucky because we have the best land trust protection in the entire United States of America, and it limits your liability. So if someone slips and falls in your rental and you're holding it in a land trust, that person cannot sue you personally. They have to sue the land trust, right? So it's almost like an LLC in that sense. So the land trusts have a ton of benefits. There's no annual filing fees, unlike an LLC where you have to file every year and pay every year. There's no such thing. And so those are kind of the big high level benefits of the land trust. So
let me ask one question, because you did a small comparison between, a land trust and then just a regular trust. What are the main differences between those? Because I would think like, okay, a land trust and a trust, I thought we were talking about the same thing, but they're obviously different. I just wanted to get some clarification on that.
There's a lot of different kinds of trusts. At the end of the day, they all function similarly. The land trust can only hold real estate, so you can't put any personal belongings in a land trust. Other kinds of trust, and the trust most people think of when they hear the word trust is, we call it a revocable living trust. That's the trust you typically, you'll leave your jewelry to this person, and you'll leave your car to this person, and, you'll leave your belongings, right? That's typically what people associate with a trust when they say the word trust. It's, for all intents and purposes, they're very similar, except the big difference is that a land trust cannot hold anything except real estate, versus the revocable trust can hold any asset that can go in there.
Cool. Okay. Thank you for running us through that. But so are there any downsides to a land trust?
It becomes situational at that point because it depends what you're trying to accomplish. Sometimes they're tough to finance. Lenders sometimes struggle to get comfortable with them. Ultimately, you just have to understand where you are, what your goals are. And that's a conversation you have with your attorney. If you were to hire me, that's a conversation we'd have, right? What are your goals? Let's talk about it, big picture. And then we kind of make a decision based on all that information.
What is the best advice you can give to a brand new investor starting out?
Number one thing, don't ever put real estate in your personal name, especially not investment real estate. Your personal residence is different, but other than that, don't put Don't put investment property in your own name. It's a recipe for disaster. It will subject you to unlimited liability. You could be wiped out. So, I mean, that's just a very simple tip. Most people know that. And the funny thing is, most people know that. They still do it anyway. Why? Because it's convenient. And they think that nothing will ever happen to them. And they think it's kind of pie in the sky until they get whacked with a lawsuit. And then they call me and say, I should have used those damn land trusts.
What if you want to take advantage of a loan product that's offering low down payment amounts? Would it be okay to grab that property under your name for the first year and then sell it to your business or place it in your land trust right after that year is up?
It's not as foolproof if you do it that way. It's still much better than having your personal name, but it's more easily tracked back to you because now you're on the chain of title. So, but listen, I mean, you have to, most investors start just like that, where they live in their first property and they get a duplex or a quad and they qualify for the, 5% down and get an FHA or 3.5% down, whatever it is. And it's a great, it's a great investment. It's a great deal. And they move on, they upgrade. So you got to do what you got to do. And the financing really, you can't do without the financing. And that's why it's very important to kind of plan that out accordingly. So, it's a good question you ask, and it's just, you gotta transfer it after the fact in that case.
As far as being a real estate attorney, how do you mitigate risk for your clients?
At the end of the day, it's not my decision how much risk the client wants to take on. I am simply there to provide guidance. Of course, I give my opinion. And I'll also say that I have different relationships with different clients, right? So I have clients who come to me and they're like, they need handholding. They don't know. Well, what do you think? What, Bishoy, what's normal in this situation? What do you think I should do? What do you usually see? Okay, I could be a little bit more assertive with that client and say, look, I don't think this is a good deal. Usually this, and this would happen. Here, they're trying to push you to do this, this, and that. You're taking on a lot of risk here. Do you really want to do this? Okay, that's one conversation. Then I got the guy who's been my client for 10 years, closed 50 deals with them. He doesn't need my input. I mean, if he does, he'll ask me specific questions. Hey, look, this paragraph mentions that the indemnification is only limited to these, situations. Like, should I be concerned? Should we strike that? Yeah, we should strike that, right? It's a more high-level conversation, but I'm not the one telling him, hey, are you concerned that, this is an 18-month note and you may not flip the property within 18? I mean, he knows what he's doing at that point. So the conversations are going to be very different based on the client. The good thing is I have that range to be able to, go either way.
When do you think it's a good time for new investors to start building relationships with real estate attorneys?
Well, it's tough to form a relationship with an attorney when you don't have any deals and you don't want to pay him. Right. And be honest. So I just be very honest. I get calls like that all the time. It's like, hey, so-and-so referred me to you. Okay, cool. Yeah. Like, how can I help? Well, I don't have anything going on right now. I don't have any deals in the pipeline. I just want you to know I want you in my corner whenever I get that deal. I'm like, okay, there's nothing else to really talk about. Right. So I get those calls sometimes, I'm very polite, but at the end of the day, if there's nothing to talk about, there's nothing to talk about. Now, it's a good idea to I don't mind if you're going to reach out, email me, call me for 2 minutes and tell me like, hey, my name is, Joey, and I want to work with you once I get these deals. Okay, cool. We've established that. Hit me up and we'll talk then. So, there is a point of like, it's too early to get a real estate attorney. But then, once you start evaluating those deals, that's probably the first time when it could make sense to get an attorney. And again, it's your comfort level on evaluating that deal. Maybe if you're paired up with, a sophisticated investor like AD who can guide you through some of that stuff, maybe you don't need me on the first deal or the first few deals, but then maybe you need me on the third or fourth deal. There's no golden rule. I don't tell people it's just what feels right to you. And when you become, you feel like you need that help. I just like to say the earlier, the better. But again, if you feel comfortable doing your first 5 deals, do your first 5 deals, but just, the earlier, the better. And it is good to kind of have that oversight in the beginning.
In your opinion, how many investment properties should be under one LLC?
It's not a golden rule. So what I tell people, in a perfect world, you do a 1-to-1 ratio. Every property should be in its own entity. Okay. Some investors are okay with that. Some investors hate it. They don't like the paperwork. They don't like the admin. They want to be lazy. Whatever. Their accountant hates it, whatever. I just tell them, at the end of the day, you're mixing or commingling your exposure on this property with this property, right? Wouldn't you want to isolate your risk? So whatever happens in this rental should only stay in this rental. So if this tenant slips and falls, why should he have access to 10 properties? Shouldn't it be isolated to that one? And that's what I try to explain to people. At the end of the day, again, you make your own decision, but I have to inform you, these are the pros of what you're doing and these are the cons. And the pros of putting a bunch of properties into one entity are very little or maybe no pros at all, except your accountant's going to be happier. Your bookkeeper is going to be happier. But okay.
You've been an awesome guest, Bishoy. We appreciate you, man. Go ahead and leave us with our B's for today.
So be persistent and be focused, and nothing's going to get in your way. You will absolutely get to your goals if you are, if you're persistent and you're focused 100% of the time. It may take time. The journey may not be a direct line. It may be, a zigzag, but you'll get there. Can I throw my socials on here? I'm on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. So the handle is @attorney Bishoy. That's attorney spelled out ATTORNEY, and then Bishoy, BISHOY, attorney Bishoy. Law firm's name is Levacy Legal, LEVACY Legal, because I want to help clients leave a legacy. Therefore, it's Levacy. And website's levacylegal.com. And then the brokerage, if you're in Florida here, it's Capstar Real Estate here in Tampa Bay. Thank you so much for having me on the show. Appreciate you.